Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yes, sir. Very good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon, you too.
Uh, we'll just let everyone settle down for a minute, and
Okay,
then we'll start with your introduction.
sure.
Uh, Hello, everyone. So today our guest is Mr. Amol Chafekar. So before we go on ahead with the session, we'll like to introduce sir. He is a production engineer by education, and he has worked in more than 10 countries on challenging assignments from government as well as for Fortune 500 companies. He is having 8 patents filed in his name with 2 project and patents awarded and showcased on NDTV Profit. Also, he is being awarded as one of the top 10 innovations of innovators of India in 2012. He is a first generation serial entrepreneur and has founded and invested in more than 9 companies. Sir has also been awarded with the best startup of the year 2017 and fellowship at the rate at Royal Academy of Engineering London. So I think we'll go ahead with Sir and let him continue with the rest of the session.
Yeah. Thanks, Mohit. Can you just give me the share screen option for the PPT?
Yeah, sir, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Mohit told me that we are from different fields, typically marketing, HR, or let's say operations, finance. So I'll try to keep it as generic as possible. Wherever tech is involved, I'll use that. Otherwise, I'll keep it as generic as possible in this session. Once he shares the access, okay, I've got the access now. Just give me a minute. Okay, can you see the PPT?
No, sir.
Okay, just a minute. Now is it there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can see, sir.
Okay, great. So let's say what I was told to talk about is majorly about prototyping. So before we jump into prototyping or before we jump into what exactly it is there, or uh, typically I'll try to divide it into two sections. One is a physical prototype, a physical mechanical engineering, a product which can be having a touch and feel kind of scenario. So that's one type of it. So that's what we'll cover. Then we'll cover a software kind of product, which is like an app or a web application, which can still be termed as a prototype or a product across. So when we are talking about prototypes over here, the word proto comes from a Greek origin. It is first, is what we can call it as. So if we see before we start actually into the prototyping phase of it, there are a couple of checks that are to be done on a very cautious level, because what is going to happen is that you're going to spend a lot of time, money, and effort, and we would want that time, money, and effort to go in the right direction part of it. Generally, what happens is that people start building prototypes or people start building sample cases or applications, and then they land up in a situation that they feel that the direction is slightly off, or we could add this, we could change this. So there's a lot of pivoting which happens when a proto is built, because new ideas pop in as we are in the phase of prototyping. So this is a very basic thing that you need to understand understand that you're going to spend a good amount of time, money, and effort before you actually start into the prototyping stage or part of it. Now, what I mean by that is number one is you will have to do an infringement check. Now, as I'm continuing, I'll also advise you if you got any questions that pop up to your mind, drop it in the chat window. I will try to cover it either during the session or post session. But whatever comes to your mind, drop it in the chat window. It would not disturb me at all. I'll be more than happy to have an interactive session. Now, first thing, as I told you, is before you start prototyping, you need to do an infringement check. Now, what is an infringement check is basically you are trying to make sure that you are not infringing anybody else's intellectual property. You may build a fantastic product, but somebody would put an infringement charge on you and saying that okay, here's my patent, here's my IP, and then you are infringing on it, and then you go into the legal suit part of it. So just before you land up into spending time, money, effort, make sure that you do not infringe anybody's IP. It can be unintentional also. Majority of the times it is unintentional, but for court of law, it does not matter whether it is intentional or unintentional. So first check before you actually touch a prototype or before you think of prototyping is you need to have an infringement check. You can get it done from a IPR attorney, or if there's anybody who is a part of your college, they would ideally be able to guide you onto this. But do this, believe me, most of the times after prototyping, if you come to know about this, it is a big headache. So make sure that you have an infringement check done. Second thing is that before you start building or before you start showcasing anything, you need to make sure that is your IP or is your idea or is your thing that you're taking out for prototyping, can we have some kind of intellectual property protection? So number one is you're not infringing on anybody else's IP, and number two is you're making sure that your IP is protected and nobody at a later stage comes and competes with you on a apple to apple basis. So in this case, you have to make sure that you can have an IP on it. It is not necessary that all products which are having an IP only succeed and those who do not have an IP don't succeed. But always good to see, because once your idea or your prototype is in public domain, by law it is not allowed to get your IP done around it. So because it is public information now. So before you post anything public out of excitement, that okay, here's a prototype, here's a product that I've done, make sure that you have your IP protection part done in advance. So that will help you. One is because you would not have too many number of people competing or copying the exact same thing, and you'll have some early advantage of filing an IPR. Because as I shared with you, that it is very tough once the information goes public. Generally, we tend to upload it on Insta or Facebook, whatever proto you have done. Try to avoid it, try to hold in. If required, go for a provisional patent. It does not cost much. If at a later point you need to scrap your idea also, it would not you would not lose a lot of money in that. But do take care of an IPR scenario. Okay, now as I told you that people generally, when you make a prototype, you generally tend to share it on social media. So first impressions generally matter. If you are building something, try to flaunt it less at a proto stage, because your product is not ready. It is not having that refinedness across. And when people see it from the consumer perspective, once you've built a full product, they may have a bias in their mind. Okay, that the product that we had seen on video or the product that we had seen in a demo or a scenario is the same. So it becomes very difficult to change their bias once you flaunt your prototype before it is fully grown product across. So try to have a first impression kept intact till the time your product is fully done. Now, a proto is typically meant for two reasons. It is basically checking your functionality, whatever you have in your mind. Make sure that you have your purpose and your output defined on paper before you start the prototyping work. Because once you start it, then it becomes a clutter. You need to make, if you start making changes on the fly, it will become a clutter across. What I'm saying again is that if you have any questions, just feel free to drop it in the chat window so that I will be able to, address and assess that instead of taking it at the end part of it. Okay. So what do we mean by purpose or output is we are talking about the end result, what that particular idea or what that particular product goal is or a deliverable or a value is. So if that value or deliverable is defined well, you can backtrace it across. Now, what I mean by backtracing is keeping the deliverable same, rest of the system can be built backward. So generally it is always advisable or it is good to build it backward, keeping the user in mind. So if we say this person who is going to be the end user of your application or your product is the most important element in the entire prototyping process. If you do not involve him from stage one, you're going to make a lot of iterations across. Now, these iterations are typically you make a product based on your thinking, your idea, your brainstorming, or a team of you, and later on you pitch it ahead to the end user. The end user is going to come up with his own version of what he would like to have in this application or the product and so on. So it is always good that if you have the end user as a part of your team, that will make whole lot of sense because you're building it keeping in mind the end user. If he's at the design stage before prototyping, nothing like that. So it's always good that you have someone at the design stage while you're making any process which is built around the end user. So end user is going to be the person who is going to typically use the product. It is not always that the person who is paying for it uses it. So a municipal corporation may buy a particular product, but it could be used by someone else in the municipal corporation. So a buyer and the end user are two different things. Sometimes it could be the same person buying the product and utilizing it, or it could be different audience altogether. So keep in mind these two things. End user involvement at a design stage is extremely important before you start prototyping anything across. Now there's one more element that has been recently, not recently, it's been around a couple of years now that people have started considering these two scenarios. There's one part of India, if you're talking about an India-based development or you're talking about a global development, these considerations are there. So Bharat is typically, hello? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So Bharat is typically an audience which is not a tech-savvy audience, which may use a vernacular language, which may have a different concept, a different UI, which would be required to be designed. Whereas in India, which is a modern day scenario where we're talking about people who are already tech savvy, they can use their smartphones. So this is the audience. So there are two different audiences. So if you are able to categorize your audience and build accordingly, that would the acceptance would be slightly higher in this, because if you're building something generic and then pushing it to the audience and saying, okay, they would know about it, they would utilize about it. I'll give you a small example in this case. We had a product of ours by the name of Interview Station. Now, this was developed back in 2015, and we had built an ATM kind of machine, and this was a station where a person would go inside, see which jobs are available, select the job, enter the voucher code, give an interview and come out. Pretty tech savvy that, okay, a person is entering a center, giving an interview and coming out of it. It was simple. It was okay for a white collar job, a person who could understand how to operate a kiosk. But we missed on to the bigger opportunity of all those people who could not operate a ATM machine or who could not operate a kiosk, who was a major crowd that we could have addressed. So the UI, the proposition, the approach is altogether different. When we talk about the previous example that I quoted, this was 2015. We revamped the model, changed it across. Now we are able to cater to both. All those who want to give in an online video resume can give it. At the same time, we have physical centers also. So we learned it in a different way because we did not consider the end user in advance. We did not consider the technology in advance. And it was built ahead of time. So I'll give you some more examples as we walk through. Now we're talking about a development platform in this case. So what I mean by a development platform, many a times we select the platform first and then see what can be fitted into it. Or let's say we're talking about a coding language or a database which is selected first, and then we say how can we fit in the existing problem statement to a solution statement using this platform. So try to see that the platform is selected at the end. What type of development platform you're using hardly matters for the end user. Even if you use a basic platform which is serving the purpose, it is good. But there is to be no rush in selecting a platform, because then you get tied up. There are limitations of a development platform, and then you try to build the functionality in such a way that the existing development platform is able to accommodate that kind of development. And second thing is, do not select what you know. So generally there are options, or based on our existing team members, which we have a platform known, okay, this does this. So before you select it, make sure that you search in all options, which are making sure that your end output is going to be defined in that. I recently gave an example of ahead of time technology. I'll give you one more example. Interview station is what we saw. We made kiosks for giving interviews. 2015, it was ahead of time. There's one more product that we had built, which was uh, typically APS, which is alternate power systems. So what it was? It was basically a battery, an additional battery bank, which used to get charged with the leakage current of the dynamo, and this leakage current was typically generating battery back power, and then it is used to be consumed at home. So it is like when you are running a vehicle. This vehicle typically charges an additional battery bank. You use the battery for charging or lighting up your homes. Slightly ahead of time, we launched it in 2012. Battery technology was not that evolved that time, but now it is different. It was lead acid batteries that time. Now we have lithium polymer, we have graphite based batteries. So select a tech which is currently there, and try to make sure that it is future ready. I mean, you need not add all the bells and whistles into the existing package, but it has to be future integrable. If it is ahead of time, the adaptation time would be slightly higher, and that is what is to be avoided, to have a quick acceptance of that tech. It is happening at a two one-way kind of communication. If you got any questions, please feel free to drop in. So it would be more interactive, because otherwise it would be a lecture talk, me speaking from one side and you getting bored on the other side. I'll continue, but I'll advise that you drop in something in the chat window, any questions, queries that you have, anything specific that you would want to listen, or anything specific that you would want to know in this session. Okay. Now, generally, if you're talking about a process, uh, or if you're talking about a prototype, it may involve multiple smaller elements to it. And if you try to compile a bigger code, or if you try to compile a bigger process, it will take time. So try to split it into different modules. And these modules will typically help you build the prototype faster. So if you build around 3 to 4 modules, test them separately, make sure that you have these 3 things defined in it. For every module that is going to go, whether it is a physical product or a software product, you have an input, process, and output for that module defined. Get it tested, keep it aside, get it tested, keep it aside, and finally assemble it. It is a faster way of making sure that it is a first time right kind of prototype which happens. Just ensure that you have an input, process, output defined for a large process, which is then divided into smaller modules, and then we compile it together. Go one step ahead. Now, most important thing that we have seen in our teams also getting, and we have now typically avoiding it, we are avoiding runtime changes. So when you're building something, or building a prototype, or building an application, there is a scenario where you come across things which you would wish to add into the existing prototype, and that is very obvious that you feel that अरे इसको add कर देते हैं, this will add value to it. But if we see, this will definitely add value, but try to see the interlinking part of it. If you just add a small patch to it, and if it is going to be having an impact elsewhere, uh, your compilation or your prototype making the first version of it would take time, because at that point you would not understand what is going wrong. So you're talking about a software product or a physical product as well, wherein you feel that okay, इसमें थोड़ा सा cornering हो जाए तो अच्छा हो जाएगा. So you're going to shoot up your time, you're going to shoot up your money part of it by adding features. Try to make a list of them, and once you try to make a list of them, make sure that you just focus on that list. Anything which is added extra can be version 2. If you try to add it at runtime, believe me, you're going to spend more time, money, and effort in just making sure that this is added. And it is a never ending story. You take an example of Windows 3.1, anybody from that age, or Windows XP. So if they would have kept on adding features to Windows 3.1, they would have kept on adding it. So it is important that you have a proto, or you have a process done, an MVP ready, before you would ideally keep on adding features to it. There's no harm in adding features. Just make sure that it is not delaying or prolonging your prototyping cycle. Because if the prototyping cycle is extended, your financial bandwidth is gone for a toss, your timeline, your efforts are gone for a toss, because you're keeping on adding things to it, which definitely will add value, but you'll have to think whether it is required in the first, as we call the proto version, or the refined version that could go ahead. Now, one important thing which is generally missed out is about the resources and skill sets required. Now, resources and skill sets would come from different elements. They would come from your co-founders, they would come from agencies, they would come from your college, it would come from an individual freelancer. So you just have to make sure that whatever resources and skill sets are required before you enter into the prototyping phase, you have them ready. Now, I've just got a question, I'll just read it, and if I can add it, but mobile apps are updating features every week. How do you make this happen? Okay. Now, there's one question over here. Mobile apps are updating new features every week. How do they make it happen? Now, what happens is that I'll give you a car-based example, and I'll give you a app-based example also. So we had a company by the name of Miracle Infotainment, which was into bit of apps. So generally, they have a production server, and then they have a final server. Now, what happens in this case is that whatever is made is tested thoroughly and then updated as a scenario. So over here, we are talking only about prototypes, where we are building something just to check the functionality. If the functionality is okay, we will fine tune it to make a MVP, which is a minimum viable product. And the development continues, it never stops. You talk about WhatsApp, you talk about any other application, as you rightly said, they are updating, and there's no stopping about it. If you're not updating your applications, you're going to be left out. So updating is one part of it, but not at the stage of prototyping, because you're going to shoot up your time till the time you make it sellable. So I hope that answers that particular question, where features can be added every week. In fact, every day they can be added, but it has to be tested thoroughly before we add it, because it should not affect any other feature previously added to the system. And resources and skill sets required are one important thing which are to be planned in advance. Otherwise, you will have to take a break, find a resource, and then restart again. So we are talking about the timeline from start of a prototype to making a final version of your prototype or a MVP across. So if you can squeeze that time, you're going to save a lot of money, which is going to be useful for you at a later stage. So try to define a deadline for your prototype. Okay, by this date, these features are to be done. You're not adding anything new upfront. You can add it in version 1, version 2, version 3, or even after your product is live. Let's go ahead. Okay, one important thing which was missed out by us also in previous days, if we did not take a video. Now, when you're testing anything, you're testing a vehicle component, an accessory, a part, or an application. Application, it is slightly different, but if you can test the cycles across and take a video of it, there are two things. There are two advantages of it. First advantage is it helps in your IPR process. It helps in your justification of your intellectual property when you come to an examination stage. That your team has really worked onto the project, and these are the videos which have been shot during the design phase or during the prototyping phase. It is not copy pasted from someone else and then taken. So these videos help in that matter. At the same time, these videos also help in reviewing it. So you may test it once, but if you have a video of it, it will help you stop, play, pause, and review and build on top of it. So take a video. It is most important. Keep a record of it. Keep the record of the versions which you're building. And see any. I mean, you see any tech or sci-fi movie, they take videos. Talk about Iron Man, he takes video. Version 1, version 2, version 3. So taking a video is very important because you can review it at length with other team members or other agencies who are willing to help you in this process. Now, most importantly, when we're talking about is end user testing. Now, testing is generally done in friend circle, or you share it across with your friends and tell that, okay, I need to test this. They can test the UI part of it, they can test the basics part of it, but you will have to test the end, get it tested from an end user because he may have a different version altogether in his mind. He'll give you more inputs than any other software tester or a mobile application tester would give you. Get it tested from the end user, any prototype that you built, and get it documented. Once you have documented, let's say if you're giving it for 10 people or 100 people, make sure that every person's personality is different and he may have a different review. Make sure that you compile all the common negatives of it and try to find a solution and build the next version. But test it thoroughly with different set of audiences, rather different type of mentalities that an end user may have, so that you don't get an unbiased result, you get a properly biased result out of it. So there are certain tools that you can use. I have seen that you have already gone through the business model canvas kind of presentation, which is a very good tool in terms of analyzing your idea on paper before you go to a prototype stage. Or Pencil is one more application for UI UX where you can iterate through it and you can make sure that before you actually land up into the coding part of it, which is the costliest affair, that everything that needs to move around the app is done and intact across. So that these are a couple of tools. I have more tools. If anybody is interested, let me know and I will just share them across of whatever we use in our day-to-day design process. So let's start with questions part of it. We have already covered around 30 minutes of a 40-minute session. If you have any questions, I would be more than happy to interact based on questions. And it can be any question, any field, any department. We have applications from different fields. I'll give you some examples of prototypes if there are no questions out here. Where are there any questions?
Sir, we are sorry, but the Wi-Fi in the campus disconnected. So many of the participants got disconnected from the meeting. They're just joining back in.
No problem, no problem. So, anything that you would want me to cover once again, or is it okay?
No, sir, it's fine. It just recently happened.
Okay, no problem. So we'll wait for them to join in, and I'll try to cover up some more things. And if there are any questions, I can cover them as well.
Sure, sir.
Hello.
Yes, Mohit.
Yeah,
I
sir.
think you
Sorry. There was some network issue in the campus, so most of
true,
the
true.
students got disconnected. But they
Correct,
are
correct.
now back in, so you may continue.
Okay. So we had come to the questions while around. If you can pop up any questions, I can typically address those. Or if I can go a couple of slides back, tell me which particular stage you had exited, so I can cover it again.
Uh, Actually, sir, on our screen we can only see the first slide.
Okay.
Uh, So I don't know why we can't switch the slides here.
Okay.
Yes.
In your case, I mean, during the entire presentation, did you see the other slides or not?
No.
You did see.
No. We were stuck on the first slide. You explained it well, so we got the context.
Okay. So I'll just run it through once in a
Yeah, sure.
quick style as a review kind of thing. So anybody who has missed out anything would be able to see it across. So can you see the first slide now? Or
Yes, sir.
should I just reshare the thing? Probably an internet issue out there. 1 minute. I'll just reshare it across. Okay. Can you see the slides changing or is it still?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll just quickly rush through it once so that all those who have missed onto this part of it can get it. We're talking about prototyping over here. I'm just going to rush through fast. If you have any questions, feel free to drop in so that we can address those as well. What we saw is before we start, there are certain checks that are to be done. You're going to spend a lot of time, money, and effort into it. So you need to spend it in the right direction so that you utilize that time. Because time once gone is gone, money can be added. Infringement checks, making sure that you're not infringing anyone else's IPR, intentional or unintentional in the court of law, it does not matter. So if somebody puts an infringement suit on you, it's going to be difficult. IPR protection, try to see that you have your IPs protected in advance before you make your information public. It is very tough once the the information goes public in Facebook, Insta, or any other media. First impressions matter. Do not flaunt your prototype too much because people would think that your product is the same which you had flaunted previously, even if you build a newer version. Purpose and output is important. What value and deliverables you are giving are to be defined before you start prototyping. End user, the most important element of the system. Make sure that he is with you, a part of the team in design or prototyping. Consider Bharat or India, both scenarios, where we're talking about the entire approach which changes right from UI UX to how we approach the customer for end acquisition and so on. Development platform, do not rush to select the development platform. Don't select what you know. Make sure that you have different platforms reviewed before you start the development on a particular platform. Ahead of time tech, I had explained this across about make it about today's tech, but integrable to future, be future ready across. Last processes, yeah. So makers, okay, I've got some questions. Great. So makers are usually get attached to prototype and want to perfect it. Yeah. So as I explained it across in the previous method also, do not try to make runtime changes. Yes, you're attached to the prototype. You would want it to be the best prototype across or the best product. Make sure that you complete your first process, list down the ideas, and go for a version 2. So there could be versions of prototypes: proto version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4. If you spend time in correcting the existing proto, it is going to be an unending ending story. I gave an example of Windows 3.1 XP, and then you go to further versions. If they would have kept on adding things, Windows 3.1, if you have not used it, believe me, it had all the errors in the world, but it still got sold and it was further developed. So make sure that you are attached to it, perfect it in the next version. Till that time, do not make runtime changes across. Resources and skills required, plan them in advance so that you don't have to. I think people have the okay. Resources and skills required, plan them in advance. Take a video of whatever you do. It is going to help you in the review process as well as contesting your IP. When the examination, the patent examination happens, your videos are going to help you crack the case. End user testing is most important. Make sure that you document it. Try to see that there are different audiences with different mindsets using and testing your application. Tools, as I said, business model canvas, you have already had a session, and that's the best tool before you actually jump onto a prototype. Make sure that is reviewed again and again, perfected so that you spend less time and money in the prototyping stage. And we are at the question stage now. Mudit, I hope it addresses your questions. Try to make versions of it, but do not shake the existing in development version. Always keep it in addition. Try to patch them together as one set, updates and so on. So even when we saw WhatsApp had some errors or had some features which could be added, but they did not rush into it. They made sure that the testing was done thoroughly before they could ideally get it out to public.
So, sir, I have a
Yeah.
question. So, like
Yeah,
prototype is a basic, like it is the first thing which you made. So, when we are taking review from our like from family member within friends, so like we may not get the right feedback from them. Like that is not the final product. So, how to get that? Like how to get the right feedback?
right.
Like, it may happen that the product which we are thinking in our mind that is not shown in the prototype. Like
Right. So
that is not
I'll
the
tell you.
final product.
True. So the question is very valid, and it generally happens when you try to show it to your family or your close friends. They do not want to discourage you, and they will say all the good things about it. But what you would want to listen at this stage are the bad things, or the negative reviews of it, so that you can correct them across. So try to see that you go and showcase the prototype to a person whom you don't know, and it does not matter to them to give you a negative or a bad remark. So in fact, at a prototyping stage or the initial stage, as many number of negative remarks you get is good, because you have a chance to upgrade, modify and change before you could launch it as a final product. So at prototyping stage, yes, it is good to get good negative remarks and try to showcase it to people who is your end target audience. Say, let's say if you have built an application for a particular set of audience, and you may not have your family members or friends fitting into that audience category. So make sure that you make a list, approach institute. Let's say if you're making something for people who cannot see, blind people, you go to an institute, tell them that okay, we are building something for these people, and we would want to have a end user feedback. So try to address or try to interact with audience that is going to use your product, and it would be refined faster instead of showcasing it to friends, family, or your close ones. So I hope that answers. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anyone else who?
Sir, can you tell us some more about your patents?
Okay. So I'll give you a couple of examples on how it started also. So before we actually file a patent, we make sure that if there is anything available in market. Let's say I'll tell you a product of ours which is a contactless wiper. It is still under ARAI testing. So it is a wiper for a four-wheeler or a windshield, wherein it does not make contact with the glass. So it is based on air swipe mechanism. So it swipes. There's a distance between the windshield, I mean the glass and the wiper, and it still cleans it across. So as you say, these products are automotive products which are built. They have a phase of around 3 years roughly before it could ideally touch the market, because there's thorough testing which goes into it. So this is one of the product which is a air swipe wiper, a non-contact kind of wiper which is there. Couple of other products are like keep safe distance, where it intimates the rear side driver that he is too close to my car at a given speed. So again, a prototype, automotive related, safety concern related, takes more time for getting ARAI or related approvals. So this is one. Then we have outdoor air purifiers. So we had launched these air purifiers much before these China-based smog towers came into picture. Started with something which was not available in market. We got a good traction, changed the business model. So apart from your product, your business model has to be robust when you're selling it. The product may be excellent, but if you're not able to, let's say, build or make a nice business model around it, it may not sell. Because business models are again important to sell a good product. There are many great products, but due to lack of business model, they are not able to sell them. So many other products which we have got a essence stick. I mean, it is not always that you have a tech product into picture. Just give me a minute. Okay, it is not always that you have a tech product. We have a essence stick which has got 4 fragrances. So every 5 minutes, the fragrance changes. So, and this is generally sold in festive seasons. We have an IP on top of it, and then we are supplying. We are majorly exporting it. You would not find them in India, but it's a small essence stick, simple idea, no tech involved. Every 5 minutes, the fragrance changes. So try to see that the prototypes are built, they're accepted by the end users. Rest of the jantar need not be aware about it as long as your end user is aware and buying it. So if you're selling something great and if your end user is happy about it, you don't have to make it public. It need not be viral every time. If you're making money out of it and your end user is happy, great.
Sir, a question following that as well.
Yeah.
When you ideate the prototype or the patent, do you have in mind a business plan or your target audience, or just it is the innovation of it first that that motivates you?
Okay. So when we file a patent, generally we first address the problem statement. And if the problem statement is great enough, which no one else is solving, then only we try to innovate around it. Say, for example, there's uh, one IP of ours which is related to gas stoves. As we have this cooking wala gas stoves, in lockdown time, I was doing some part of the cooking and I realized that the flame is getting wasted. The flame which comes from a gas burner is getting wasted. And that was a problem statement because a lot of amount of gas was getting wasted around. So we built a small gadget or rather a small burner which contained the flame inside, increased the temperature with gels, and it used to give, uh, it used to supply heat via 3 methods: conduction, convection, and radiation. So that particular piece was built as to address a problem statement. So innovation in this case is based on a problem statement or a need, which generally is successful. If we just innovate, it becomes a science project. So if you try to have the end user, not a business plan also, but if you try to address a problem statement, business plan will fall into place, product innovation will fall into place. But problem statement is the main pivotal point. That's where we rather that's where we focus on.
Okay, sir.
So
Thank you.
yeah. What is journey about installing the first commercial air purifier at Pune? Okay. So when we came up with outdoor air purifiers, these were new to market. People didn't believe in it. So first was to create a belief, and then it was to sell about it. So what we did is that we adopted a business model of we're not selling you anything kind of thing. Let us install it, and the displays on top of it will give us our money. So we distributed these outdoor air purifiers for free at public places, may it be airports, may it be traffic signals, railway stations, and so on. And we used to earn from the displays on top of it. So we kind of changed or twisted the business model because one is selling in government is tough. Getting money from government is tougher. So it was not possible for us to sell them directly. So we said, okay, give us space, see the results. If you like the results, we'll keep it. If you don't like the results, we'll take it back. And money wise, we will earn from the displays on top of it, which any advertiser would give it. So that's how the first journey of installing and proving the outdoor air purifier started. Now people are buying from us, government is buying from us because the product is proven. But till the time your product is proven, it takes a lot of effort to actually make sure that it is sold or people give money against it. And one more thing to check whether your product or prototype is successful or MVP is successful is people giving money for it. If people tell that, okay, it is good, it is great, but not paying for it, believe me, it is not good. The moment somebody pays for it, may it be 1 rupee, 10 rupee, 100 rupees, but if they pay, that means your product has check marked the test of acceptance. Is there anyone else? Anyone else who has a question or something? Or
Uh,
yeah,
if anyone else has a question, you can type it in chat or unmute yourselves. So I guess there are no questions left, sir.
okay. So I'll stop the screen sharing across.
There's a question, sir,
Yeah.
on the chat.
Any innovations you had during pandemic? Yes. So as I told you that I was cooking at home and that innovated the burner which contains the flame energy and then disposes it off. So that is one of the innovation which was there. Apart from that, in air purifiers, we were till date only addressing particulate matter as well as gases. In pandemic, we learned that viruses are also part of pollutants, and we could build and utilize our time to uh, add to an existing innovation where we are now taking care of particulate matter, gases, as well as viruses and pathogens. Because everything was on hold, production was on hold, installation was on hold, and the only thing we had was time. And having time in hand was great because we could ideally get back to our drawing boards and innovate things out there. So there's one more thing which happened post pandemic was I play table tennis. So we built a auto scoring table tennis table. So if anybody of you plays table tennis, it would be uh, it is basically a table. Now we are talking with manufacturers to get it in production scale where it scores for you automatically. You don't have to score it manually. There's no jury which is required. Even if it nicks the table, uh, it is able to calculate and give you a score on that. So these are a couple of innovations, and all innovations are need based. If there is a need, if you figure out that there is a need of it or a problem, apart from innovation, it will be easy for you to sell also if you're addressing it correctly. You can stay connected. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm generally available on LinkedIn and open to connect. If you have any questions, queries, if you have any ideas you would want to explore, uh, we can take it ahead. I'm just typing a link of ours where there are different ventures that we have, where I'm a retired guy now, so I have all the time in the world to help, assist. It's an early retirement, but required one. I mean, retired in the sense I've retired from the regular work, not the retired life. So, so I don't have to worry about whether the material is reached office, not dispatch हुआ है नहीं हुआ है. So all that regular work retirement is sorted. So this is, I've shared a link. We have different products. We are adding up more products. If you feel that if any of your idea is related to it, feel free to connect. If there is an idea that you would want to explore, we are in circle with a good number of investors or startup mentors who can actually assist you from your region or from your domain and then take it ahead.
Sure, sir. That was a very
Yeah.
insightful session and a great help from your side. So
My
we'd
pleasure,
like to
completely.
formally conclude the session now.
Sure.
It was a great session and it helped a lot about understanding the importance of a prototype and what are the various factors that are required for your product design, development of the model of your business. So that is a great help from your side to a lot of the students here. And I hope that this session will motivate a lot of young minds for coming into the business side of the world. So thanks a lot for the great session and hope we can host you again sometime in the future.
Feel free to connect across. And if you have an idea, generally go for it. You never know what idea can click where. So, as I told you, the Eastern Stick idea, it was not, if it wouldn't have been pursued, it wouldn't have been a sellable model because it is a very simple, basic 4 fragrances, 5 minutes, the fragrance changes. And I'm a tech guy, but it happened and we are making a decent sale. So, if you have anything in your mind, it's one life and you can explore to get it sorted. Yeah. So, thank you. Best of luck, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you all for your time. The meet is over. You can leave now.